Evening, everyone. So I'm not going to be speaking on the Bhagavatam, um, but I'll be speaking on attaining Bhakti through renunciation, based on Swami Vivekananda's Bhakti, which is that second book after Bhakti Yoga. I kept the opening chants in to have some variety, so we'll start with that. Janmadhyasya yatonvayaditartas charte sabhigna svarat tene brahma hridaya adi kavaye muyanti yat suraya tejo vari mridam yata vinimayo yatad trisargo mrisha damna svena sada nirasta kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi, that from whom creation, sustenance, and dissolution of the universe take place, who is both the instrumental and material cause of it, who is omniscient, is the only one having self-mastery, being the one independent entity, who illumined the mind of Brahma with the Vedic revelation, whose wisdom is the wonder of even the greatest sages, in whom the world of the three gunas subsist, just as the combination of materials like fire, water, and earth subsist in their causes without changing their elemental nature, in whose consciousness there is nothing false. On that truth supreme we meditate. So, Prabhakti is very important to understand in Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is using our emotions to realize the infinite. It's trying to connect our emotions to the infinite. Our emotions are sort of our primary faculty. We, make many decisions even using emotions, but most of our day-to-day experience consists of feeling, having emotions. So this directing of the emotions in Bhakti Yoga and using the emotions and intensifying the emotions, it has to have some goal in mind. It has to have an attainment. In yoga, there has to be tat prapti, because the yoga is the path of the upaya, and so there has to be that attainment of that. And so prabhakti is where we find that attainment. It may be that the initial stages of prabhakti are still in the realm of separation from God, but or at least some level. But then at the end, that includes the realization. The prabhakti and realization are not two distinct things, and so we're able to see within the prabhakti that the ultimate is attained, that the infinite is attained. This tatprapti, this prabhakti, it is the fulfillment of all of our ideals. We have so many ideals about our life, about love, about God, about everything about the society, etc. But everything is trying to get at happiness and trying to get at affection and love. So here we have the ultimate form of love and of affection, and all of these things. It's the culmination of all of the smaller attractions into one unit ideal. So Swami Saradananda said about Sri Ramakrishna that people came to him with all different ideals. Some people saw that he was having visions, and so they came and they wanted to have visions. Other people heard that he had divine experience, and so they thought they could get miracles worked for them. They could get some end that they would go pray, and their prayers would be somehow either fulfilled or quickened. And Swamiji says um, that him and the other direct disciples and all of the genuine seekers, they came there with spiritual ideals, but with diverse spiritual ideals. So some people had the ideal of vairagya, some people had more of an ideal of uplifting the world. And yet Sri Ramakrishna fulfilled all of these and yet was still beyond all of these ideals. And so the attainment of parabhakti is realizing that in life, and connecting to that via the emotions is the way that we progress through bhakti yoga and to attain that. And so in this we have to have some amount of renunciation. Sometimes it seems like bhakti is so easy and there's no renunciation, but yet there is renunciation, although it is more natural. Like Sri Ramakrishna was, having all these experiences, and it felt like he was just getting pulled, and so he was asking, like, Mother, what is happening? I don't know if this is if I'm doing the right actions, but he was so naturally getting pulled by his love for God that he was just so quickly moving beyond the standard forms of worship. And so in the beginning of bhakti, there needs to be some basic renunciation, and then the prabhakti, which we're talking about today, there's a higher level of renunciation. But all through bhakti, there's, renunciation is happening. The old ideas are getting left behind, and the old habits are getting left behind. But at the higher level, there's a higher level of renunciation where we're completely leaving behind, all of the past identities and egos that we associated with, and moving up to a level where we don't have these limited identifications. So the renunciation at the prabhakti level is just as important as at the Gauna bhakti level. It is a purification. So Swami Vivekananda says that this is the deconcretization of the soul, that we begin to realize that we're, as it were, going to be turned into mere matter by being associated and identified with these limited identities and with these physical objects of desire. And so we feel that, and we pull up, and we let go, and this is this deconcretization of the soul. So the ego limitations, and at a certain point, the aids to bhakti that we initially used, they begin to disappear. We don't need to follow all of the forms that are outlined in the scriptures. We don't need to feel that I am small, that I am someone who is in awe of God, and that God is someone who's so much more powerful and far away and sort of unreachable. So these ideas need to be transcended in the Parabhakti. In Sri Ramakrishna's life, this was seen very clearly, where after he had his first vision at Dakshineswar, where he had this intense burning desire to have the vision of the mother. And so he picked up a sword and said that I'm going to end my life. And at that moment, then he had in a very intense vision of the divine. He had this intense vision of so much of an infinite effulgence of light, and he disappeared into that, and he had the vision of the Divine Mother. And then after that point, he begins to really go beyond the need for exactly following the scriptural injunctions in puja, and um, not always needing to use the aids that he had previously been relying on. So we see this through the perspective of Hridai as well, which is interesting. That Hridai says that at that time there was an eerie feeling, there was a feeling of a divine presence in Dakshineswar, in the Kali temple. And then when Thakur was there, then it was even much more intense. And while Sri Ramakrishna was doing the worship, then Hridai would feel this devotion and this reverence. But then when Hridai would leave, then he would begin to feel this fear come in, and this feeling that like something's going to go wrong. But he just had that connection at that time when he saw Sri Ramakrishna, but then other times he lost it. He saw Sri Ramakrishna feeding the Divine Mother a little bit, and saying, "Oh, you want to eat after I've had a little bit," and then yeah. So he's very intimate with God. And there was a cat that wandered into the temple, and so he addressed the cat as the mother and gave some prasad to the cat. Mother said, or he said to the mother, like, "Oh, you want?" Well, he was putting the mother to bed, and he said, "Oh, you want me to lie down?" And so he lies down onto the bed there next to her. And so Hridai was watching all of this, and he was just totally blown away and terrified at the same time. More so when he wasn't there. When he was there, then the devotion entered into him, and he was able to sort of let go of the intellect and let go of the thinking. But then when he would leave, it would go away. And it was a similar thing for the temple officials there. Well, much more so this skepticism. So they began to see Sri Ramakrishna worshipping in this very unorthodox way and not using the standard rituals. And so they told Mathur, and then Mathur came. But Mathur, he had some level of advancement. So once he saw Sri Ramakrishna doing the worship, he thought that the worship of the mother is finally now being done. And so he saluted Sri Ramakrishna and the mother and told the temple officials to let them be. So he had this huge intensity of devotion, which was very scary for Hridai to see and for other people to see, because they weren't able to see inside. They were just looking at the body and cross-referencing with what their idea of what should be done was, and then making these assumptions. So this purification happens, and the soul becomes much more subtle and able to receive the divine impulse. And it happens in an extremely natural way. There's this great naturalness in Bhakti Yoga. Swami Vivekananda gives this analogy that when we see when it's nighttime and we see the stars, they seem very beautiful and they capture our attention. But then when the moon comes out, then the moon captures our attention, and it's so much more brilliant than the stars. And then when the sun comes out, then everything you can barely even see, and the sun has totally captured your attention. And so, just like that, when we move our love, our attachment onto God, then the other things just fall off. We see this all the time because we all have, this attachment, these emotions, this love. And so in the world, a man might love a woman, and then another woman comes, and the other one just drops off from the mind. Um, Similarly, Swami gives this example that um, a very uncultured person, let's say in a tribe somewhere, his mind's always occupied with gathering food, with hunting, with doing whatever they need to have shelter. Um, but then if you take that person and bring them into the modern society, then the mind will just get captured by that, and the other things will be forgotten. So love is this universal force which is attracting us. And so naturally this renunciation happens and the previous things are forgotten without any need for repression. So in um, Swami Vivekananda compares to the other paths of yoga and the renunciation that you find there. So Jnana yoga is very difficult renunciation. You just have your intellectual understanding and you're able to just cut off everything else and it falls away, disappears. And so it is a very sharp renunciation. Then Raja Yoga, you need to do all this very specific forms of meditation in a very specific environment. And after a long time, you get this proper experience of nature, and you're able to say that I am not the nature, that I'm the witness, and stand back, that I'm the controller. And so it is something which is much more arduous as well. And karma yoga, you can look at from the Bhakti Marga or from the Jnana Marga. In the Jnana Marga, similar to Jnana, it is quite difficult because it is just unnatural for us to work without a motive. It is extremely difficult to work without a motive. Sri Ramakrishna says that karma yoga is not really for this age. It just takes too long. Of course, we still use it because you want to use all of these aids that are presented to you, that are available to us. And then in the bhakti path of karma yoga, it is easier, but it is still a similar thing where it is difficult to do so much work without expecting some result for yourself. We naturally want our efforts to have some result which should come back to us in whatever pleasurable form that we want. And so this is Swami Vivekananda says that this is the central secret of Bhakti Yoga, is this directing the emotions towards God. None of the feelings are intrinsically wrong. It is just where they are directed towards. They need to be universalized. At present, they may be very narrow, directed towards one physical thing, but the lens needs to just be widened up, and that emotion will become connected with infinite. There's these two aspects of this, priti and viraha. Priti is taking pleasure in God, and viraha is feeling the pain of separation from God. And so these are basically two of the fundamental feelings and aspects of the emotional mind, is the pleasure and the pain. And so if we simply associate these in a way which pushes us forward towards God, then we'll move very quickly and we'll forget about everything else. One example Swami Bhuteshananda gives in his commentary on Narada Bhakti is that the gopis, when Krishna went away for one day, and to them that was such an agony, and then when he came back, they did not want to leave him out of their sight. And so at that time, it felt like to them that just one wink of the eye was such a terrible pain and annoyance to them. Swami Bhutashananda says that one wink to them was as if yuga had passed. And so there you also see the intensity of experience, that when you direct the feelings towards God, they sort of become infinite. They become very, very powerful. And so as we progress in directing the love towards God, and it becomes more and more universal, we see that it ascends through a gradient of these, what we can say, ideals of love. Priti and Virha are two of these. Priti is, I think, the third in Shandilya's scheme. Two schemes that I found where Shandilya has a scheme of these ideals, and Chaitanya has a scheme of these ideals of love. So in Shandilya's, he has 10 of these ideals of love that you ascend through, and I suppose it's sort of like the highest, well, each is like the highest crystallized form of that emotion, maybe. But anyway, so Chaitanya's scheme, he takes, well, the word I think that he uses that encapsulates all of these levels is priti, but I don't think it's used in the same way as we just looked at. But that includes these bhavas, like Mahabhava, and so it's sort of a schema that we can look at to understand how love develops. In Shandilya's scheme, you see at the higher levels the Sarvatadbhava and the Apati Kulya, which is Sarvatadbhava is seeing that everything is a manifestation of God, and the Apati Kulya is the complete resignation, the feeling that I have no will apart from the God's will. And so then the question is how is it possible for the emotions to connect to the infinite? That our emotions seem so temporary, that they come and go, and they always lead us to things which aren't even what we really want. And so if they're lacking any intelligence and they're temporary, then how can they connect to the infinite? This is sort of what pulled me into giving this topic, because I was initially thinking Bhakti Yoga, that I would study that book more. And I went through the first pass of that book, and I came to this book, and I just got stuck trying to understand this idea of how the universal love is this force which manifests as all of these loves. And so I've been thinking about that for a while. So that's basically the short of it, is that the universal love is that God's love manifests as all of these small loves. God's love is universal. While these loves are narrow, they're directed towards things which are temporary, and thus they remain at that level. But that's from one perspective. From the perspective of Sarvatadbhav, someone who feels that everything is a manifestation of God, then for that person it seems obvious how these emotions connect to the infinite. This world is a mirror world. Swami Vivekananda says that this world is a mirror of whatever our ideals are. We hear sometimes, well, I've heard a few times, I think in some pop philosophy or something, people saying that like we create our own reality. And when I heard that, I was like, no, like there's only one reality, Vedanta. But if you look at it with different definitions of the words, then it makes sense that we project our ideals onto the world, and we also project the world onto our ideals. Um, Someone who has this intense ambition to build a business, everywhere they're just going to see business opportunities or lack thereof. Someone with, lust or greed, they see either objects of lust or not object of lust, and or place to earn money or place which they can't earn money, and and thereby these thoughts become intensified. You project it onto the external, and it seems like your whole reality is made up of whatever these deep set ideals are. And then we try to change the world to become like our ideals. Um, we feel that the world is bad, that there's so much problems in the world, and then we try to help the world and to make the world similar to our ideal of the world being a utopia and that sort of thing. Um, but these are ultimately misconceptions that we can find a permanent ideal in the world, that we can find the fulfillment of any ideal in something temporary, unless the ideal is something temporary, which happens when we project the world onto our ideal, and then we lose the ideal, and then the ideal comes down to our level. Um, so, so this shows that love is the universal motive force, because whatever we love, that's our ideal. The ideal and the object of love are generally synonymous, because if something is not our ideal and we love it, that love will fade pretty quickly. And so when we begin to witness this, which may happen very much later in the sadhana, I think generally you would begin to witness the love inside first. But when you do witness it outside, these internal weaknesses do disappear, and it becomes very obvious that whatever our selfish clingings are and whatever our little personalities are, that they can be transcended, that they're simply badly molded images of love, but we can mold them into what we really want in life, that we want from bhakti, that we want from yoga. But until we attain that, it is a very difficult state and a very sad state. To bring in a brief story from that I observed, I was working at a car wash for a little while after high school, and it was a big facility. They had a car shop or a auto shop there as well. And I had spoken to, I knew the number two there. I was friends with him. He was an immigrant from Mexico, and so he had been able to get into this wonderful position. He'd really sort of lived the American dream and was doing very well. He was a very intelligent guy, but he had this problem with this identification with this little personality idea, and this selfish clinging, this idea that without alcohol, I can't bear my thoughts. Without alcohol, I can't control my thoughts. That there's nothing I can do about these feelings. I can't make anything of these feelings. I can't direct them towards anything which is going to, bring me happiness without this alcohol. And so he got caught with a DUI one time, and somehow the owner of the car wash got him out of it. He was an influential person in the community, I guess. And so he got out of it, and for a little while he's fine. But then this thought comes back. It comes creeping back that without this physical thing, without this, it seems very easy. Like it seems like it's difficult use the mind to you know form our personality and to alter our emotions, um, because the physical thing is right there, and you don't have to take another step into the mental realm. And so he continued, and then he received another DUI, and now he's back in Mexico working in the Mexican police force, which is very generally it can be very difficult. And so until we begin to see this potentiality of the emotions to reach this high state, um, we'll just get pulled along into physical samsara, into these little personalities. Um, and so how do we accomplish this connection and this escape from narrowness and this cycle of love and hatred? Um, Swami Vivekananda gives some very nice ideas for this. He said that love is true love can be thought of as a triangle with three angles, and each of these angles needs to be there for it to be a real permanent emotion or feeling. So there should be no bargaining in love. There should be no feeling of fear in love, and there should be no rival. So the object of love should be our highest ideal. Otherwise, it will not be a true form of love. So no bargaining means that we should not have an ulterior motive. We should love God for God, love God as the infinite, as the Satchitananda, not as someone who will give us something. So we see many examples in the stories from Sri Ramakrishna's life. There was one monk who came to Dakshineswar, and Sri Ramakrishna said that he was wearing a shirt that looked like he had gotten it off of a corpse at the cremation ground. And he was just wandering around. He had nothing to his name. He had no desire for anything else. He had just this intense spirituality within him. So he came up and stared at the deity, stared at Kali, and he recited a hymn with such power that Sri Ramakrishna said that the whole building was as if it was shaking. And the deity smiled back at him. Then he went to where the beggars were, where the beggars were eating, and the beggars told him to leave because he was too dirty. And so then he went over, and there was a dog, and so he sat with his arm around the dog, and he was eating some food and sharing it with the dog. And so he had no concern whatsoever whether God gave him something, and yet he had this extremely powerful connection and personality with God where, if he had a prayer for, something, for some need, something that we would think would be a need, it would be fulfilled. But he had no thought for this sort of thing. And Sri Ramakrishna loved the Leela with no ulterior motive, and so he told Hriday that this man is a realized person, that he's feeling that his apparent madness is really this God realization. And so then Hriday started to follow him, and he says, "Please tell me something." And he tells him something. He tells him that you see this water, when you see this, or you see this water in this ditch, when you see this in the Ganges water as the same, then you will be ready to realize. But it wasn't enough for Hriday, and so he said, "Please make me your disciple." And so he kept chasing him for so far, and then the other monk, the ghoulish monk, he picked up a rock and said, "Run back that way." And so Hriday left. But so Swamiji says that devotees aren't beggars. And so that monk was shooed away by the beggars, um, and he was experiencing that bliss without any need for begging. Then Swamiji says that in love there is no fear, that in true love there is no room for fear. Selfishness breeds fear, this begging feeling, the feeling that I need to get something from this person who I'm going to express this love to. This breeds fear. You feel that without whatever this other thing is, then you'll come to some grief. So the love should be one-pointed. It should just be for God, and it is only in God where we can find the ability to have that sort of a love, because anything else is going to be temporary, and if we are directing our love at the material plane, then our attachments are at the material plane, and then we will need to have this sort of transactionality in life. And if that fear is allowed to come, then the fear will block out the love. We won't be able to see the love. We won't be able to see the potential for moving forward in bhakti. Like I was studying for this lecture, and if I was totally thinking about what is the result of the lecture, is it going to be very good? Am I going to be very nervous or something? Then I won't be able to think about God and think about the studies in the light of bhakti and the actual experience of it. But then love conquers fear. So the fear will come, but it is temporary, and the love will conquer the fear. Swami Vivekananda gives the example of a mother who is with who isn't, when she's not with her child, and then maybe a dog will bark and she will run away, seemingly very scared. But when she is with the child, even if a tiger comes, then she will be in the jaws of the tiger to save her child. And so the fear just gets pushed out of the way by this love. And so similarly, there can be no blasphemy. Swamiji says that this idea of blasphemy is generally quite dangerous, that we shouldn't feel that we're taking the name of God in vain. The more you take the name of God, the better. That will conquer the fear, that will get rid of everything that we feel is vanity. And then the last angle is that there can be no rival in true love. And so this is based on the simple idea that whatever our highest ideal is what we love. And so if God isn't our highest ideal, if there's multiple options and we're comparing and contrasting, then that can't be the environment for devotion to cultivate. But there's also two aspects to this, I think, where whatever our highest ideal is pulls us. So, if let's say we really want to build a business, like in a previous example, you really think that's your best thing, then you'll get pulled towards doing that. Your actions will align with building a business, and eventually that will become your God. And also, the highest ideal pulls everything. God is the karana samashti. God is the causal general, and so He really controls everything. So whatever our highest ideal is pulls us, but also the highest ideal pulls us. alone. And eventually, this priority that we put on God when we initially make Him our highest ideal, and He really becomes our God, and then our ideal of God, our understanding of God, becomes much more evolved, and we see that God is that from which all creation destruction, all creation maintenance and destruction come from. And so all of the actions, all of the little things, all of the little actions really are controlled by God, will really be controlled by God. And that is the universal force ID. And so earlier we saw the external result, or the external viewpoint of the Bhakti, that he sees God, he sees the love as every force in the world, as every attraction. All of that is the manifestation of God. But then, so what is the internal result? What is the internal experience and state of the Bhakti? So he becomes a God of love. He realizes the God of love within him, and this is really the same as Jnana. When he gets to that level, he's not missing anything. So Swami Vivekananda says that you begin to have this light of love within you. You begin to see this light of love and feel this light of love. That's becomes this very apparent guiding force. It's something which is it'll come at the level of your perceived light in the sort of visual field, but it's also something much more than that. It's a feeling, something which is deep in your psyche, working and pulling you closer to God. In Sri Ramakrishna's life, you see this, that he when he had his first vision, he had this vision of immense light, and he disappeared into it. And then later he was having this vision of light as well. First he had the vision of light, and then after that he began to see the full detailed picture of the mother. Before that he said that I would see her face, I would see maybe her hand, but it wouldn't always be this complete image. But afterwards, then it was this complete image. So God enters the mind, and our vision, our vision and imagination are sort of our most one of our most prominent faculties, and so it completely pervades that and transforms our life very naturally from where we were before, and then we're still seeing light. It isn't like the experience that we were used to has been completely obliterated, and God becomes extremely very real and alive. The abstract ideal becomes completely real. Similarly, we saw it in Sri Ramakrishna's life, that when he was practicing the Vatsalya Bhava, him and Jatadhari saw this image of, or had this vision of Rama, of baby Rama, and it was a wonderful thing that they both saw Ramlala at the same time. And it wasn't even two separate things. They saw the same manifestation at the same time. And so when Jatadhari first came there, he was mostly the one who Ramlala would spend time with. And nobody else knew that, but Sri Ramakrishna was able to perceive that, and then he began to perceive Ramlala. And then Ramlala began to spend more time with Sri Ramakrishna, and they developed this very intense relationship. before this, Sri Ramakrishna had begun to feel this feminine mood before he was practicing the Vatsalya Bhava, which is the mother's attitude. And so he had this very intense mother and son connection with God. Swami Sardananda was saying that when he was telling us about this, he was telling us that he was feeding Ramlala, and he was feeding him with this coarse rice, and Sri Ramakrishna was crying because he knew that Ram's mother Kausalya usually, or that she very carefully fed him with butter and cream, and so he was weeping. And Sardananda said that none of them could understand, but yet they still began to weep as well, because it was just so apparent that this was this very intense, real experience of love that Sri Ramakrishna was having. And so the aids become unnecessary. It becomes totally evident without any need for the external aids, without any need for this intellectual conviction being explained these ideas. And that's similar to jnana, where in jnana we simply have this identification with the infinite, and we do not perceive the relative at all. And so in this bhakti yoga, the bhakta does not miss anything that the jnana attains. And so there was a couple stories connected with this, that Swami Jagadananda, who was esteemed as one of the most eminent scholars that have been in the Ramakrishna mission, but he had a very deep devotion as well. When one day he was chopping vegetables, and Holy Mother came, and she said, "Very good that you boys are chopping the vegetables. I'm very happy to see." And he said that, "Well, if I can please the Divine Mother by chopping vegetables, then I don't need to do any sadhana, because the purpose of sadhana is to please the Divine Mother." And so he was this great scholar, but yet he had this deep devotional attitude. At this height of bhakti, at the pra-bhakti, where it is a pure bhakti, then there's the identity with jnana and bhakti. There's no differentiation between them. In bhakti, you see this unbroken love, which is described like oil being poured from one vessel into another. It is unconditional love. It's not dependent on any other forms. And so it is very similar to the jnana, which is beyond any forms, beyond any names. At the relative level of jnana, at the upper level of jnana, then you will see the difference between these two. But at the pra level, which is beyond the book learning, then the differentiation is not there to be spoken of. Swami Shivananda was being read the Mandukya Upanishad by an attendant, and he heard one verse that was very close to his heart, and he went into samadhi and was totally just identified with the Nirguna Brahma, and he was remaining in that state. And then a brahmachari came up to him, and it was on the Kali Puja day, and he said, "Maharaj, can I have your permission to do the Kali Puja?" And then immediately Shivananda went into the bhava of being the mother's child, and said that I cannot give you permission to do that. It's only the mother's will that will give you the permission. And so he just immediately transitioned into feeling this devotion very intensely, and he went to see everybody um, at the Kali Puja, and he was stark naked, and so the brahmacharis held the sheet in front of him, but he was just completely oblivious to what was around him, and just completely filled with this feeling of devotion. At the end of this book, Swami Vivekananda sort of gives two perspectives, two possibilities as the conclusion in the chapter entitled Conclusion. He talks about the very intense duality devotion, where you're eternally feeling this intense devotion. But then he says that in the last sentence, I believe he says that the lover, the object of love, and the love all merge into one. And so it seemed to me like he was sort of giving two possibilities, and you see two different perspectives. Like in Chaitanya's philosophy, he says that the Nirguna Brahma is really more of a secondary thing in the form of God, and the relationship between the devotee and the God of love is the main thing. He says it's like when you first see something in the distance and you see it with very little detail, and that is similar to the Nirguna Brahma. And then when it comes closer and you see it in more detail, and then it's more real to you, and he says that's what the Saguna Brahma is like, and that's the real form. But then in Vedanta, of course, we see Advaita Vedanta. We see the other perspective that this trinity of love merges into one. And so, which one is the truth? Who knows? Chaitanya never left behind like a systematic philosophy. He was too engaged in bhakti. So who knows what he would have, what impact that would have had. And so this renunciation in bhakti is the way that we progress. Is the way that all the things that compress us, which contract us, all of those things get left behind, and we progress towards either this eternal being with God in Goloka or wherever, or all three merge, and we are eternally one with God as the Brahman. And so that is my talk for today. Thank you. Nigamakau pataror galitam phalam Shukamukha damrita davasam yutam Bibata bhagavatam rasamalayam Vuraho rasika bhuviba vugaha. O devotees, quaff to intoxication this nectar of the fruit of the tree of Vedas, flowing from the mouth of the great sage Shuka, and mixed with the ambrosia from his words. Mukunda Madhava Govinda Bo Keshava Madhava Hari Hari Bo. Mukunda Madhava Govinda Bo Keshava Madhava Hari Hari Bol. 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 Krishna Krishna Bol. Krishna Krishna Bol. Krishna Krishna Bol. Krishna Krishna Bol. Mukunda Madhava Govinda Bol. Keshava Madhava Hari Hari Bol. Keshava Madhava Hari Hari Bol. Okay, if there are any questions. Okay.
So I think when you concluded, you had like two forms of realization, like you're comparing between the Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta realization and the Bhakti, Parabhakti.
Achintya Beta Beta.
Okay, you're talking about the Achintya Bheda Bheda.
Yeah, because both are Parabhakti.
Yeah, so and basically that was my question, like because we started off with the saying that the Parabhakti and what the Gyanis find as their culmination, they are the same. So must be some way to resolve the final realization also, isn't it?
Yeah, there could be. Yeah, if God is infinitely powerful, unless this is the um, immovable object. um, yeah, I mean, I have, I don't know. I didn't research into whether um, someone who has studied both of these deeply has tried to. But yeah, I'm sure there's people with ideas, but I don't know. Like, but Swamiji says that we're Advaita Vedantists. Swami Vivekananda. That we are Advaita Vedantists. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you again.